Welcome to Metal Matters, a Gimme Radio podcast. I'm your host, Mike Hill, and I'll be leading you on this adventure. We'll be getting into deep discussions about classic records, profiles on up-and-coming bands, and interviews with your favorite artists. You can check out new episodes every week, so be sure to subscribe and never miss out. What's up, everybody? Mike Hill here for another episode of Metal Matters. This time around, it's a classic records episode, and we're going to be talking about a record that a lot of you guys may not even be familiar with, by a band that you may never ever heard of. So it should be a lot of fun. But before we get going on that, I just want to extend thanks to everyone who's been listening. I'm blown away by the kind words that I've read in the comments on iTunes, and I really appreciate that. I'm going to continue to do my best and work hard and keep doing a good job on all this stuff. So once again, thanks a lot. And I'm really touched and moved by that. Back in the murky 1980s, there was a band called Skin Yard that sort of set the groundwork for a lot of what was known as the quote-unquote grunge scene in the Pacific Northwest. The record Hallowed Ground stands out, to me at least, as one of their best records, if not their best record. And we're going to talk about that record and hopefully turn you guys on to some stuff that you haven't heard before. Enjoy. We were just talking about how the early 90s Pacific Northwest hard rock scene was given the term grunge. And you and I are both unclear as to who originated that term. So if anyone out there knows who came up with the term grunge, feel free to leave it in the comments or something like that, because both Randy and I have no idea who came up with this term. And the term itself actually has almost no meaning, really.
They were pleading for somebody out there.
You know, it's just something that we're suspecting that it was somebody in the press who was tasked with the mission of describing this type of music, and he came up with this term.
I wonder if it was the same person who came up with the term stoner rock.
Yeah, maybe, you know.
Another great one.
But that style of music, like that era, that late 80s, early 90s era of bands, I really like a lot of those bands. And, you know, I was, at the time, like heavily into like, old school death metal, the stuff on Earache. I was starting to get into like the II Reptile catalog, and the stuff from the Northwest, like Soundgarden, the Melvins, that stuff gave like this interesting twist on hard rock, because it appeared to me that it was dudes who are into punk, into classic rock, like Zeppelin and old heavy metal like Black Sabbath, and then also like hardcore music like Black Flag, and it all kind of mixed together into this like bizarre pairing of bands and styles, and it all sort of mixes together. Like even the early Soundgarden stuff too. If you listen to their early material, there's like you can hear like a very punk sort of thing going on there.
Definitely.
Yeah, were you into a lot of those bands?
Yeah, man. Yeah, definitely. I actually have this thought. As far not all those bands, but a good number of those bands became very mainstream. A lot of them signed to majors. They're very popular, hugely popular.
Yeah,
I believe that's the last movement of rock music in this country, at least, that'll ever be mainstream
in like an arena way.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I agree.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean,
I should say that, because I'm sure there's shit out there right now that's considered rock that plays in arenas, but to me, it's fucking garbage. I think I love a lot of those bands. I think they're great rock bands.
Sure.
And I don't think there'll ever be another legit rock movement in this country where it's, turn on the radio, you can hear Soundgarden, or, Alice in Chains will play at the Comcast Theater or whatever.
Right.
There hasn't been since, not in my opinion.
No, I just think
that's
that
for sure.
I think music in general is so fractured now that I don't even know who. I mean, who does like play these big arenas really?
I don't know.
I
don't know. I'm sure if someone threw some names out there, I'd probably just shake my head. Yeah. But yes, I got into I started listening to punk and hardcore and some metal stuff, and it led me to this. Like you said, the amphetamine reptile stuff, touch and go stuff. So yeah, I was heavily into this stuff in the early 90s.
So now we were talking about Soundgarden and Alice in Chains, but there's a band that a lot of those guys will cite as being a heavy influence on them that the general metal fan or fan of hard rock music is unfamiliar with. And that leads us to the subject of this week's classic records, and that's Skin Yard and their classic record, Hallowed Ground. Some of you guys out there might be thinking, well, who the fuck is Skin Yard?
Well, I think a lot of people might be.
Yeah. Part of this effort that we're doing here, yes, we are looking to celebrate some of the, generally agreed upon classic records, but we're also trying to spread the word on cool shit that you and I both are into that some people might not be into,
right? But
that we ourselves are defining as classic records. And that's what we're going with the Skin Yard Hallowed Ground record.
We're going in the back of the closet.
Yeah, we're going deep.
Deep
cuts this
Pulling
time
out
around.
that old winter jacket you forgot you had.
Yeah. So, I mean, Skin Yard formed in 1985, and they disbanded in 1993. And there was like a long hiatus, and they released a sort of a rarities record like later on, I think 2008 or something like that. And probably the most notable thing is that Jack Endino was one of the founding members, and Jack Endino went on to become the go-to recording engineer for pretty much all these bands that we talked about, like Soundgarden, Mudhoney, Green River, maybe not Alice in Chains, but Nirvana, Tad, Screaming Trees, like all these seminal Seattle Northwest, would-be icons.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And then Jack Endino also went on to have like a very prolific recording career. We're doing the High on Fire record. Did he do it?
Yeah. It seems like he's coming back around, and I hear his name a lot.
Yeah.
Recording newer like heavy records where there's years that went by that maybe he did record stuff, but it wasn't on my radar. But now, I hear his name mentioned a lot, which is great. I think he's a great producer, great engineer. It's great. The other notable thing was Hallowed Ground's the second album.
Yeah.
The first album, Matt Cameron from Soundgarden and Pearl Jam played drums.
Yes. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that were in this band that went on to do other things.
Right. For a second.
Yeah, definitely. Right. The other guy, the other founding member was this guy, Daniel House, who was not the founder of CZ Records, but the eventual owner of that record label.
Right.
And, CZ was like, a 90s sort of staple. They put out a lot of like these kind of underground releases, by Skin Yard. They also, the Tree People, like all these bands obscure bands that existed in this sort of glow of the 90s. And then the singer was Ben McMillan, who the late Ben McMillan passed away.
Right.
I think in 2008 possibly. And he went on to be the vocalist of a band called Grunt Truck that was on a major label that had members of the Accused in it too.
Yeah, the guitar player, I believe.
And for those of you who listen to the crossover episode, we cover the Accused, pretty deeply on that episode. Skin Yard existed sort of in this vacuum, I guess, and they never really got the credit they deserve, I think, for being like the laying out the blueprint for what a lot of these other bands, because 1985, that was like before,
right,
right, just a little bit before all this, like Mother Love Bone and all this other stuff too. Yeah,
they planted a lot of the seeds for what these other bands went on to reap, and I don't believe Skin Yard never got signed to a major.
Nope,
like all those other bands did.
Yeah. I mean, before we get into, our worship of Hallowed Ground, Skin Yard's career, they released the self-titled record in '87 on CZ Records. They appeared on the Deep Six compilation. That was like, it had like Malfunction, Melvins.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't remember that, but yeah.
Hallowed Ground came out in '88 on Toxic Shock. Fist-Sized Chunks, 1990 on Cruise Records. And Cruise Records was a offshoot, sort of side label for Greg Ginn, Black Flag.
Right.
And the majority of their records are on Cruise and CZ Records. In '91, they had 1,000 Smiling Knuckles. '93, Inside the Eye. And in 2001, they released sort of like a rarities record called Start at the Top. And, that included some covers. There's like, Machine Gun Etiquette by The Damned. And Ace Frehley's Snowblind is a cover of that record on there. So, but now that right there, that's a really good, interesting point that this band Skin Yard, they dig Ace Frehley and they dig The Damned.
Yeah.
And I think that back in 1985, like that was kind of like, to be into heavy rock and punk was not they were kind of mutually exclusive, similar to like we were talking about crossover between punk and thrash. If you liked punk, you kind of weren't into like classic rock. You kind of thought Kiss sucked, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like, I guess with a lot of these bands that later became known as grunge, that's like where you can be into Kiss and Minor Threat and Black Flag, right? And like Bauhaus, you know what I mean?
Which is, I think, that's where me and you are at.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's kind of the kind of people we are. So,
yeah.
So
I mean that's like, pretty. I think people have this like, take it for granted that bands can have a sort of broad background. And I think Skin Yard is one of the bands that like put that concept on the map for a lot of people. And I think that laid the groundwork for, the bands we were just talking about, like Soundgarden and, Alice in Chains. Though Alice in Chains is a little bit different because they kind of started out as like a cock rock band.
Yeah, they did.
They adopted the sort of sound, I think, of these other bands.
Yeah.
Nothing but love for Alice in Chains.
I love Alice in Chains.
But
however they got to where they got,
whatever.
I love Alice in Chains.
But I'm not trying to revise like history,
right?
Because let's make no mistake about it. They started out like wanting to be Guns N' Roses and LA Guns.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Mother Love Bone was pretty glam.
Absolutely.
Too. They weren't really a quote unquote grunge band. They didn't really have that sound.
Yeah. In Mother Love Bone, prior to that, there was Green River, which featured a lot of the same members without Andrew Wood.
Right.
And that had Mark Arm from who later went on to do Mudhoney. He was the vocalist.
Right.
And I prefer Green River, actually.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I was aware of them and I've heard some stuff, but you really turned me on to Green River. And it's weird because that was before Mother Love Bone, but that sounded more like the Stooges. Like almost what became after.
Yep.
But they took this weird sidestep to Mother Love Bone, which is like kind of glammy. It's kind of weird.
I mean, Green River had like their moments of like they were like Stooges and like Aerosmith in a weird way. And then there was, and some of their stuff was like super dark sounding too.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. You can't, this episode is about Skin Yard, but you can't not talk about these other bands because that scene, if you think about the Northwest, like there's probably only about 40 dudes that played in all these bands.
Yeah, right. And like 50 bands.
If that many.
Right.
There was like guys like changing members. Like we were saying, Matt Cameron was on the first Skin Yard album. And then he left to join Soundgarden full time or to form that band or whatever. Brett Martin, who joined the band after Hallowed Ground, and he appears on the record Fist-Sized Chunks. He went on to be in the Screaming Trees, which became a huge band, and that was Mark Lanegan's band essentially, and he's royalty of alternative rock or whatever you want to call him. You know what I mean?
Whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Mark Lanegan is like one of these cats out there who's like, he's going to be thought of as like Nick Cave was thought of. I think, you know what I mean?
Unmistakable voice.
Very unmistakable voice. Like, he's very like his material now is like very adult. It's like very much like
yeah.
music for adults. You know
It
what I
is. I still like it. I mean, I like Screaming Trees. I like his earlier solo records more so than his recent ones. But that voice, man, it just crushes me every time I hear it. And thankfully, he's still alive. Because not to go down this road,
dude.
A lot of these vocalists for all these bands we've been talking about are gone.
Yeah. Well, Ben McMillan died of like he had a medical condition.
He did.
You
But
know, he didn't kill himself.
no,
or
you're
drug
right.
overdose or anything.
True.
Yeah. But it's like that excesses seem to be and depression as a result of these excesses sort of leads these people down this dark road where they end up taking their own lives, unfortunately. And Lanegan's still with us.
He is.
But when I say adult music, I don't try to, I'm not disparaging what he does, but it's like a Mark Lanegan record. It's appealing to someone who, maybe they've been divorced or something like that, or
or about to be,
or they've gone through like a lifetime of misery or something, and they're in their like mid 40s or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he has one of those voices that exudes darkness.
Yeah, world weary. Like he's been traveling the highways and byways of this old world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. Yeah,
and
yeah,
and I love Mark Lanegan. I think he's great. But yeah, like I was saying, like that scene, all those people had their roots in this like tiny little scene of like I said, maybe like 20 or 30 guys really, and they all mixed it up. Went out there and did stuff, and probably while they were doing these things, had no idea that they were going to blow up into anything.
No, I don't think that was the intention, really.
Yeah, and like unfortunately, Skin Yard never became like a household name, even though their career extended into the 90s. They somehow just remained obscure, and the record "Hallowed Ground" that we're going to talk about is just as good, I think, as the best of any of these other bands' records. You know what I mean?
I agree.
Yeah.
This record is incredible.
Hallowed Ground was recorded at Reciprocal Recordings in Seattle by Jack Endino, of course, the guitar player of the band, and who was making a career for himself recording all these bands that we were just talking about. Yep. It was released on Toxic Shock. The runtime is 46 minutes, 13 seconds. And that's pretty much all the particulars about it. Probably a handful of people bought it when it came out. Their friends, family.
Which is a shame. It's such a good record.
Yeah. And also you got to remember that time in the late 80s, there, it was, in some ways it was better because there were less bands releasing records.
Right.
But there wasn't like that instantaneous, PR like you have now, where there's like, you put something online and the whole world knows about it.
Right.
Like, records and news about bands kind of creeped out into the universe slowly. You know what I mean?
And a lot of time, the news about bands was when you went to the record store and started flipping through records. You'd be like, "Oh, what is this?"
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I mean, that's how I remember seeing all those early Tad records and being like, "Wow, these look interesting." I was looking for like New York hardcore records or whatever.
Yeah,
but,
totally. But I would have never found out about Skin Yard had it not been actually recommended to me, and I spent a short period of time living in the Pacific Northwest in the early 90s. I don't know if you ever knew this about me, Randy.
I didn't remember, but yes, you did tell me that before.
Yeah. So I was living in a town called Bellingham, Washington, which is like approximately 90 miles north of Seattle and about 60 or 45 miles south of the Canadian border. And it was a cool town to live in that period of time.
What years were you there?
Like 92, 93.
Yeah, it's a cool time to be there.
Yeah. And there was one record store in that town called, there's probably more than one, but there's the one that I went to called Cellophane Square, which I believe it did have a location in Seattle too. So there was two. It's gone now.
Of course.
Yeah, because I've been there in the last few years, we've rolled through town, and actually we played there Wolves in the Throne Room a number of years ago, and there was no Cellophane Square, so it was gone. And, I would go into this record store, there'd be like these like end caps with all this like sub pop stuff on it. And, I tried to play in some bands And it was that same thing. There was like maybe 10 guys who played in bands, and they all played in bands together. Right. And I got to meet everyone. And no one was really doing what I wanted to do, really, which wasn't this type of music necessarily.
Right.
But this one guy recommended this band Skin Yard. He played the record 1,000 Smiling Knuckles for me first. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. There's like cool guitar stuff on it. And then I went down to Sullivan Square and I bought that record. And I saw they had others there. And Hallowed Ground was the second one that I bought by them. And I liked it because there was like a topless chick with a gun on the cover.
Yeah.
And that immediately caught my eye. So, but that record became my go-to record whenever I wanted to listen to Skin Yard. And, that was like, over the years, that's pretty much the one that I recommend to everyone and that I want to go back and listen to. And I'm going to go as far as to say that some of the stuff on that record has actually influenced my playing and songwriting.
I can hear that.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a lot of cool like atmosphere on that particular record.
Back when I got into all this stuff, from the Pacific Northwest, I was aware of Skin Yard. I heard the name, seen the records. I never actually bought a record. I may have heard a song here or there somewhere along the way, but it was honestly about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, hanging out at your old apartment.
Yeah.
When you're like, you like this band Skin Yard. And I'm like, well, I know who they are. And then you introduced me to this record. So you've had this record on your radar a lot longer than I have.
Oh, yeah.
But in the short time, I've become kind of obsessed with it. So much so that I haven't really checked out any of the other, well, that's not true. I've checked out some of the other records, but they don't grab me like this record does.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a bad song on this record. I go back to it over and over and over. I'm like, oh, I should check out the first record or the third record. And I have, but and they're good, but not, something about this record is special.
The iTunes version or the version on Apple Music is missing one song.
I thought it had an extra song.
No, there's a song called Wither.
Oh.
That's not on, I believe it's not on the Apple Music version.
I probably have that version somewhere else, though.
Yeah, Wither is on the CD version that I have, which is like, and that's like one of my favorite songs.
I'm me being lazy. I have, you can't just usually go to a record store and find this record.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard to find and probably completely out of print, really.
It is, but I mean, one place you can find anything is Discogs. And I have been on there many times and about to pull the trigger. I don't own this. I'm ashamed to say.
Okay.
I'm doing a podcast about this classic record.
No, but you can appreciate something you don't own.
I don't own it, but I will own it. Maybe for a Christmas present to myself.
Buy yourself this record.
Yeah, because you can get vinyl and CD copies relatively, for $20 or
that's how much they're going for on like
$30. Yeah,
that's not bad.
No, it's totally worth it.
Yeah. I mean, you won't get much with this record. You'll get the record and a sleeve and the cover. Right. That's basically it.
That's okay though.
Yeah, but these days, people want like a download card and like a fucking gatefold and the book and all these things.
That's because don't get me started.
Yeah, I mean, I like that stuff.
I like that stuff too, but the most important thing is what's on the record.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, to describe this record, it's I'm sure there's probably a small minority of people out there who've actually familiar with this band, or maybe not. Maybe there are people out there who know who they are. But it is, you can hear the beginnings of what those bands like Soundgarden and Alice in Chains were doing. This kind of slow, brooding, very heavy. The guitar tones are different. You can tell Jack Endino is playing like a single coil, like maybe a Stratocaster or something like that, with a lot of delay on it and like, reverb and, a little chorus maybe. And if someone pressed me to say, what does it sound like? I would say if you took Led Zeppelin and like Fields of the Nephilim and like sort of aggregated those two bands together, that's kind of what I feel like Skin Yard would sound like.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad description at all. For some reason, though, when I listen to this record, a band that pops into my mind a lot is Jawbox.
Really? Interesting.
Yes, a lot.
Okay.
Some of the vocal delivery, guitar sound, just the songwriting.
All right.
Because this record too. Before we scare people away talking about Alice in Chains and stuff, this is a dark record. I think it's a very dark
very
record.
dark record.
Nah, you know, it's not a death metal record. It's not
No.
dark like that. It's not satanic. It's just what's a good way to describe it?
Well,
Dark,
that's why I factored in like Fields of the Nephilim.
Okay,
because
yeah.
it's like if you listen to like what's that record Zune, which is like a more metal industrial record by them. You know, there's like a real heavy vibe like of sadness and like remorse and despair and all that good stuff. You know, and the guitar work is very it's got a lot of reverb on it. It's like cavernous sounding, and
it's got the atmosphere of like a death rock
Yeah.
or a classic goth record, but it's neither of those things.
but it's heavy. It's a heavy rock, heavy metal record, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm telling you, man, there's especially track 2. I don't want to jump ahead here, but Open Fist reminds me so much of Jawbox.
Wow.
And I know you're probably not the biggest.
No, I
Jawbox
like them.
fan,
I do.
But
I like them a lot, actually.
A lot of people. Well, all right. A lot of people think they get First of all, they get Jawbox and Jawbreaker confused.
Two
apples and
oranges, man.
Although they
100%.
toured together,
Yeah.
apples and oranges. Jawbox has the same sort of darkness to a lot of their stuff. They're not that they're a dark band. They're not. But they're also not a happy band.
No.
They're not a poppy band at all. And, you know, they were on Discord Records, so a lot of people think, oh, you know, it's got that whole stigma attached to it. But
Right.
Jawbox was also on, I believe they're on one of the Dope Guns Fucking in the Streets
See,
compilations.
I equated them more because they did a split with that band Tar.
Right,
which
and they
is
toured with them as
they
well.
toured together. That's where I saw them in Tar play together.
Yeah, I think we were at the same
Probably,
show.
yeah, the
Didn't-
Middle East or
Didn't
something
talk to
like
each
that.
other.
Yeah, well, you know, we didn't know each other really. That's
good
probably
reason.
before I knew you. But yeah, it's like it's so interesting to talk about this record and to hear you say that, because I think I can see it.
Yeah.
But it's not something I would have initially like went to.
But I think that's what's cool about this record, man.
Yeah.
Is you can hear a lot of different things, the things you wouldn't normally think of until someone else says it. And you're like, oh, like the Fields of Nephilim thing. Like,
Yeah.
Now you saying that, I'm like, yeah, but
Yeah.
I never thought that.
Uh-huh.
You know? And this band too would have been right at home on Amphetamine Reptile,
Totally.
which people have heard me and you gush for
Yeah.
years about Amphetamine Reptile and that noise rock scene. But to me, this band would have been right at home on that label, would not have been out of place at all. So that has a heavy, like, we're using those words again, but like noise rock, heavy element of that on there. I mean, that's one of the reasons I like it so much. You know?
Yeah, and no one was into this shit at this juncture that it came out. If you think 1985, or this album came out in 1987, right? What did I say?
88, I think.
Hallowed Ground, 88. Okay, so 1988. All right. Danzig was a big record.
Yep.
Guns N' Roses,
Yeah, oh yeah.
huge, right?
Huge.
And then like Metallica, I think the Injustice for All record was somewhere around that. Maybe Justice for All.
It was Justice for All, yeah.
So the Cult Love,
Yeah.
that's not what this shit is, man. And like those are like the big hard rock records, you know what I mean?
Right.
And underground wise was like not this either, man. Like in the underground world, no one was, this is like subterranean basement, sub-basement stuff. When I was kidding around earlier, but I wasn't really kidding when I was like, when this record came out, they probably sold a few of their buddies,
Right.
some of the other bands they toured with or were friends with, and that was it, really.
That's a good question I had for you. I couldn't find out a lot of information on this before we get into the actual record. Did they tour?
I read somewhere that they did a tour. You know what I mean?
Like a full
and it was like, that's actually prompted one of the members to quit the band. That's how bad it was, apparently, which is, I know. I've been through tours like that too. Man.
Never heard that story before.
Actually, the drummer on this record, apparently he quit the band, and I'm not going to be, I might be wrong based on some of the research I've done. And it might be one-sided research from some member,
Yeah, sure.
disgruntled or whatever.
That happens?
Yeah. But apparently the drummer left after the tour for this record because it was, so brutal and hard, which is not surprising because, I remember being that age, a young man. And I'm like, oh, cool. This record label is putting out our album. Awesome. It got a review of Maximum Rock and Roll. Wow, this is great, Then Then you go out on the road and no one knows who the fuck you are because no one has your album because it's only available in certain places and you're playing in like, you know, Lansing, Michigan, or actually that would be a good place for a band, but like, you know, you're playing in Canton, Ohio or someplace, some nowhere.
Or Appleton, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
In the basement of an antique store.
Yeah, you know, like a place like that where there's no kids that like this kind of stuff. And that, if you play like 3 weeks of shows like that, that would crush your spirit. And then when you get back to Seattle, you probably are like, you know what, man, I think I'm gonna get a real job and, you know, go back to school or something like that. And that's when you know, that prompted him to leave.
So they toured, but they went did their own tour. They weren't on like a opening for someone or anything like that. Right?
We're talking. They're on Toxic Shock, dude.
Yeah,
I know. You know, what I mean, it's like. It's sad, but it's true. I mean,
yeah.
You know, and Toxic Shock was like, they put out COC. They put out a Tree People record, a band I really love. You know, it's an old Doug March band rather.
Who went on to do Built to Spill.
Yep, he went, and the Halo Benders.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Right.
You know, the Dayglow Abortions are on Toxic Shock. So none of these were like, you know, except for maybe COC, who, you know, they went on to become, you know, whatever.
Right.
They had major label records out eventually. But, you know, this wasn't like, you know, you weren't on a, like Sub Pop, or like a label. Actually, Sub Pop doesn't even, in 1988, they weren't barely a fucking idea, man.
Well, that's what's funny too, is you think like this band, they had to have an album on Sub Pop. They had a single on Sub Pop.
A single.
But not an album.
Nope.
But in my opinion, this album, if it was on Sub Pop, would be probably definitely in my top 5 Sub Pop releases ever.
I mean, arguably, and I believe this too, if it was on Sub Pop, this Skin Yard would have gotten signed to a major.
Probably.
Yeah, because they had a great vocalist. They had excellent songs. You know, I mean, I just think that, I don't know what the fuck happened. Maybe one of the guys like fucked Jonathan Poneman's girlfriend or something like that. Or who knows, dude. But like, maybe there are some, I don't know why they never got to be a massive band.
Well, and Endino recorded so much of that early Sub Pop shit. You figure it's, of course.
It could have been like, hey, do me a favor, put out this record on our fucking label, will you? You know? But it's like, but it just didn't happen, man. And to this day, it's baffled me.
Yeah, me too. That's why I brought it up. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but hey.
Do you have any favorite tracks on this album?
Yeah, all of them. No, yeah, I do think the whole record is great. I don't think there's a weak song on the record.
No.
I'll go 3-1. How's that?
Yeah, man.
My third favorite song is the first song, Stranger.
Okay.
Just great first track, great opening track. Punches you right in the face. My second favorite is In the Black House.
Oh, dude.
Which is the song you played for me that introduced me to this record.
Yeah.
Great song. But my favorite is track 2, Open Fist.
Nice. Okay.
And that's the song I really, really get the Jawbox vibe from.
I could see that on that particular track, definitely. You know, I'm going to give you my favorite because The Stranger is actually my third favorite. And my favorite is In the Black House. That is the standout record. Like if I'm like, you know, man, I want to listen to a Skin Yard song.
That's
it. Put on In the Black House. It's just such a dark, like, that song is like just darkness, man. Straight up. It's just depressing, heavy. It's got such like, it's like, you know, Peter Murphy and like, fucking Led Zeppelin or something like that, man. It's I don't know, it sounds weird though, right?
Yeah, totally though.
And the song Wither. That one,
I don't have that.
See, that's not on the Apple Music version.
I gotta say, I don't know that song. That's
gonna be the Wither is gonna be the outro for this episode. So if you guys are listening, stick it out to the end and you'll hear it because you're not gonna hear it on Apple Music. So you're gonna hear it here. Metal Matters, classic records only. So yeah, it's that song. It's like, once again, man, I feel like Ben McMillan has like this like subtle like Robert Plant thing a little bit, you know, with his voice.
I can hear that.
But yeah, but that's what I mean. There's so many aspects to this thing that.
But I wouldn't think that if you didn't say it.
That's what I'm saying, man.
Right.
But on this song, he has a very Robert Plant thing going on. but the music itself is like a death rock song.
Right.
It's fucking so good, man. And so yeah, I mean that's like those 2 tracks, brilliance. So I mean, anyone out there, you if you want to broaden your horizons, man, look this band up, and if you can, find the vinyl or the CD, because it does have that extra song on it.
Okay.
Or maybe you could find a download somewhere for free on some blog or whatever.
Even better, if someone out there owns or runs a record label and wants to lose a ton of money, they should reissue this record.
You know what, man? I think that the fact that Jack Endino, this is his band basically, that might have some pull.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just being an asshole, but I would love to, do that, but I don't run a record label and don't know how to. But that would be amazing if someone would reissue this, and maybe Endino could, put his
remix it or something like that.
Yeah, not that it needs it, but
yeah,
remaster it at least maybe, so it's a little louder or whatever. But that would be great, because they're just like a forgotten band, and this record in particular, I think, could use the reissue treatment.
Right on. Well, there you have it, people. Skin Yard Hallowed Ground. Another entry into our classic records here on Metal Matters. You've been listening to Metal Matters, a Gimme Radio podcast. We'll be back next week, so be sure to subscribe and never miss out. Also, be sure to check out Gimme Radio via web, iOS, or Android for one of the best metal communities in the world, exclusive interviews and merch, and so much more.